So, lads, today we are going to be talking a little bit about the potential new coach for the Indiana Fever. And look, Christy Sides is still in her job. And I think one thing that a lot of people are kind of talking about as if it's a guarantee that Christy Sides is staying in her job, I think it's more likely than not she's gone. Again, it could just be a me thing. Maybe I'm the one that's like looking too far into things. I think it's unlikely she stays. It's really unlikely she stays. But one coach that's constantly being talked about is Stephanie White. Stephanie White is the coach of the Sun. She is, and I actually think the biggest reason why she is being talked about is not actually due to her basketball coaching. I think it is because she basically came out and said, we need to just focus on basketball and stop focusing on the trolls. I think that's the biggest reason people are pushing for her. Let's be real. Because her team is barely worse than the Lynx. You could argue Cheryl Reeves is good a coach and nobody's pushing for that one. But the one thing I will say when it comes to the Sun is that she's more likely to leave Connecticut than obviously Cheryl Reeves is. Because Connecticut might have to go into a rebuild. I think one of the biggest problems in Connecticut, a lot of people are like, you're going to start trading Alyssa Thomas, you're going to trade a bunch of these players. It's like, the problem with Connecticut is they don't have their pick next year. I'm pretty sure the Chicago Sky, or if they don't, or it's a pick swap maybe. Like they have something. I'm their pick this year, but I think it's maybe a pick swap next year with the Chicago Sky. But if they're bad, I don't think they control their own pick. So it's going to be hard for them to be like a super high competing team, especially because since 2019, year after year after year, they fall this much short. And like there's been too many years now they've like almost been there. They've almost been at the top and they just have came up a bit short. But one interesting thing with Stephanie White as a coach is you can see here, she played for the Indiana Fever. She coached the Indiana Fever. She was an Indiana Fever coach for 5 years, or for 6 seasons. She was the Indiana Fever assistant coach when they won the championship. Like, she won a championship as an assistant coach, and she was an Eastern Conference champion in 2015. They did lose to the Lynx, but she coached the Indiana Fever to the final. And then obviously has been a superb coach for the Connecticut Sun the last 2 years. So her resume is absolutely immaculate. It is incredible. And if the Indiana Fever can get Stephanie White, she's 100 times better than Christy Sides. If Stephanie White wants the Indiana Fever job and the Fever don't fire Christy Sides on the spot, I would be very disappointed. But I don't really necessarily think that Stephanie White is the perfect, especially from looking at these Sun teams. These Sun teams were really good, but they were good because they were able to drag teams down to their level. The problem is that you've got to coach Caitlin Clark like she's Tyrese Halliburton. And for me, I think it's more than likely we see a hire from within. I think because we saw the president of basketball operations coming from the Pacers, being like the assistant GM for the Pacers. I think that happening means I have a weird feeling, I have a good feeling that it's going to be one of the Pacers assistant coaches. It's going to be someone that's been around Tyrese Halliburton. And maybe my only logic for Christy Sides staying another year is if they're saying, look, we're not going to win next year, but we want a coach to spend one more year learning about that system before we give them to the Fever. Because what we don't want to do is have a coach that's not ready for the Fever and then them basically being fired after a year in a coaching carousel. The problem is that you have a peak with Christy Sides, and your peak is you don't beat any of the good teams, you beat all the bad teams, and you win 23 games. Like, we also can't forget, of the teams that finished above 500, they were 1-3 against the Sun, 1-2 against the Lynx, 1-3 against the Liberty, 1-3 against the Storm, and 0-4 against the Aces. But again, they swept the Mercury, they swept the Dream, they 3-1 the Chicago Sky, so they beat all the teams under them. And that's kind of the peak of what you're going to get when it comes to Chrissy sides. But I just don't think Stephanie White is that person. And I know a lot more conversations are coming up about that. And I think this becomes real if DeWanna Bonner retires. If DeWanna Bonner retires, I think you're going to see the Sun look to, I think they're going to keep Dejanay. I think they might look to trade for Alyssa, but they're going to probably look to get off Marina. They're going to look to get off, they're going to core Alyssa Thomas and trade her to get some assets back. And what they're going to probably build through is they're going to keep Bree Jones. She's only 28 years old. I know she's off an Achilles tear. They're going to bring Layla Lacan over, who's super. Like, Layla Lacan is a super, super guard. Like, her and Dejanay in the backcourt, that's going to be fine in the future. And then they're going to hopefully get a boatload of picks and maybe a couple of young players. Like, if you are, I'm just trying to think of a team that might need like an Alyssa Thomas. Like a team with a bunch of shooters. Let's just say, to get some young players, if you're going to like the Sparks and you go to them and you be like, look, give us, like Hamby's a bit old, maybe give us Rakia Jackson and a first. You get Alyssa Thomas to play with Paige Beckers and Cameron Brink. And I'm not sure they do that, but that could be a trade. You might go to the Valkyries if the Valkyries are interested in competing straight away. And be like, if the Valkyries manage to pick up, say, Jade Melbourne or something else, like early on, be like, look, give us your pick in the draft. You've taken Jade Melbourne in the expansion. Give us Jade Melbourne. And I don't know, maybe someone else is there and be like, give us those two young players. Give us your pick in the draft and your pick next year and you can take AT. I don't know. Just, I think it's going to be a trade for young players or some assets for an Alyssa Thomas, who, again, is a really good player, but we saw that there's only so far you can go with Ben Simmons. That's just the truth of it. But if that happens, I can see Stephanie White walking. Like, she has competed for championships. I don't see her going through a rebuild, especially when there is that potential for her to go back to a team she's already taken to the finals and go on. So I don't think Stephanie White's going to be the right choice, but I do think if Stephanie White's available and the Fever don't get her, they're crazy. Like, I think there is like a perfect coach that is probably not even involved with women's basketball at the minute. But I think the reality of the situation is that Stephanie White is one of the best coaches in the W. And I have enough confidence in her being able to adapt. And let's be real, if a coach isn't willing to come in and play around Caitlin Clark, they're going to be fired too. Anyway. So, yeah, that is an interesting one. Will she be the coach of this team? I doubt it. Would she be the number one option for me for this team? No, I would rather take someone from the Pacers that has worked with Tyrese Halliburton. But at the same time, I do think Stephanie White is a 100 times better upgrade on Christie's sides. And bringing in Stephanie White doesn't make them contenders next year. I don't think they're going to win next year. Like, a lot of people are talking about them win next year. No, I think I tweeted out. Like, I'm wrong with that one. But the reality is what the Fever need is, because these rookie contracts are gold dust. And coming into the 2026 season, they're going to have Caitlin Clark and Leah Boston on that rookie deal. Then you can start to, during the Great Reset, look for 2 max contract players to build around them. So if you've Stephanie White as your coach, you're definitely going to get some good ones.